My crew drills environmental test bores. It's usually for some new suburban development, like the one we're on now out by the old quarry. Day in, day out, it's the same thing. Sedimentary rock, dry soil, maybe some shale. It's boring work, literally. But 3 weeks ago, that all changed. We were at 480 feet when the drill bit didn't just stop, it sank. It dropped a full 5 feet, just like that, into an unexpected void. We pulled up the core sample, expecting nothing out of the ordinary. But it wasn't rock. It was this dense, rubbery mass, kind of like compressed peat moss. But it was hot. So hot you couldn't touch it without thick gloves. Even more disturbing than the heat was the smell. It was this terrifying cocktail of iron ozone and a sickly sweet decay like tropical fruit left to rot in a sealed basement. The smell hit you right in the back of the throat. We brought the core out into the sunlight for a better look. It was made of a million tiny intertwined fibers. They were a dark purple color, viscous and held together by this thin, oily sheen. It was obviously biological, but none of the geologists or botanists we had on call had ever seen anything like it, not even close. It was something entirely new, something alien. The pit boss, an old-timer named Al, wasn't fazed. He just ordered us to keep drilling. If it's oil, we're rich, he said. If it's something else, we seal it up. Al's a practical man, or at least he was. So we pushed on, deeper into whatever this thing was. The next layer, another 50 feet down, was even worse. When the drill pulled up this time, the entire core barrel was coated in a substance that looked like frozen, melted butter. It was a pale, sickly yellow, and it was pulsating with its own dull internal light. It was mesmerizing in a horrifying way. I reached out and touched the sample with a gloved finger. The glove immediately stuck, and I felt this startling, internal chill that seemed to bypass the glove entirely and go straight to my bone marrow. It was a cold that felt intelligent. I snatched my hand back, leaving a fingertip-sized depression in the cold, oily yellow mass. Over the next few days, we just watched it, and it watched us back, I swear. The material was growing. Slowly, inexorably, those purple fibers were pushing out from the sides of the borehole. They were forming this intricate geometric lattice that pulsed faintly. And that's when we connected it to the thrumming sound we'd have been picking up on the seismic monitors. We thought it was a faulty pipe or resonance from the drill. We were wrong. The thrumming wasn't mechanical. It was a heartbeat. A massive, deep, planetary heartbeat coming from right beneath our feet. Al decided he'd had enough. He tried to seal the borehole with concrete grout, pumping hundreds and hundreds of gallons down the hole. The grout went in, filling the void we'd created, but the heartbeat didn't stop. In fact, it got louder, more demanding, as if we'd just annoyed it. I started having these vivid, waking nightmares. I'd be wide awake, but I could feel the texture of that cold, buttery substance pressing against my eyes, my skin. I could smell the rot. The final straw came yesterday. The entire crew felt ill. We were all dizzy, nauseous, and had this constant gnawing hunger that no amount of food could satisfy. We'd been breathing that heavy metallic air for too long. It was getting inside us. Al finally agreed to evacuate and call in the authorities. Whatever this was, it was way beyond a drilling crew. As we were loading up the last of the sensitive gear, I went back to the borehole one last time, I don't know why. The concrete plug looked solid, but the ground all around it was steaming, venting that same sweet, rotten smell. I glanced down and saw the discarded yellow sample, the one I'd touched days before. It was hard and brittle now, like old plastic. As I held it, a small fragment flaked off and tumbled into the mud. I didn't see where it landed. I turned to leave, but I stopped dead in my tracks. The sun had set, and the distant streetlights of the new development cast these long, sickly orange shadows across the site. And there, nestled perfectly in the center of the muddy track, Right where my boot was about to land was the small, flaked piece of yellow material. It wasn't brittle anymore. It was soft, glistening, and attached to it like a tiny feeder root was a single, impossibly fine strand of purple fiber that led straight down into the earth. It was pulsating faintly, waiting for my boot to pass, waiting for a ride. I backed away slowly, got in my truck, and didn't look back. When I got home, I immediately stripped off the clothes I wore that day, sealed them tight in a plastic trash bag. This morning, I picked up the bag to take it to the dumpster, and I heard a faint, persistent click from inside, like a shell cracking open. I dropped the bag in shock, and something rolled out across my garage floor. It was the yellow fragment, the one I thought I'd lost at the site. It was warm to the touch now, and it smelled sickeningly sweet. It followed me home. Thanks for tuning in. This is what's been happening. If you found this chilling, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the edge. Stay safe out there. Have you ever made a decision that seemed like a great idea at the time, only to realize way too late that you'd walked into a nightmare? That's what happened to me. My friend Max, bless his opportunistic heart, landed the gig of a lifetime, house-sitting a luxury penthouse for 6 whole months. The place belonged to some reclusive architect, a guy with very specific and very weird tastes. Max, being Max, immediately cashed in. He offered me $500 to cover for him for just 1 week while he went to Burning Man. $500 for a week in a luxury apartment? I said yes before he even finished the sentence. The penthouse was something else. It was perched high above the city, a sterile palace of glass and polished concrete. It felt less like a home and more like a modern art museum, or more accurately, a mausoleum. The vibe was just cold. Max walked me through the rules. Rule number 1, don't touch the thermostat. The architect liked it chilly. Rule number 2, water the dozen or so orchids scattered around the place. Fine. Rule number 3, and this was the big one. Under no circumstances were you to go into the master bedroom. Max said the architect was a private guy and had sealed it off himself before leaving, pushing heavy, custom furniture against the door. Seemed excessive, but hey, it wasn't my house. The first 2 days were a dream. I lounged around, watched movies on a TV bigger than my car, and enjoyed the silence. The only odd thing was the smell. The entire apartment had this faint, distinct scent of Old Spice and fresh-cut metal. Max told me it was the architect's signature scent or something. A bit strange, but I shrugged it off. It was peaceful, if a little sterile. The calm before the storm. The dread didn't creep in. It arrived with a sudden, chilling announcement on the 3rd night. I was lying in the guest bed, which felt like a slab of designer ice trying to get to sleep. That's when I heard it, a quiet, rhythmic tapping sound. It wasn't random, like a pipe settling. This was measured, deliberate, a perfect mechanical beat, like a metronome set to exactly 60 beats per minute. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the wall right behind my headboard, the wall I shared with the forbidden master bedroom. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I slowly got out of bed and pressed my ear against the cold concrete. The second my ear touched the wall, the tapping stopped. Complete silence. My mind raced. Was it the wind? An animal? I decided to test it. I tapped my knuckles against the wall, a little shave and a haircut rhythm. Nothing. Not a sound in response. I waited for what felt like an eternity, then gave up and climbed back into bed. 10 minutes later, just as my heart rate was returning to normal, taps, tap, taps, it was back, and this time a horrifying thought hit me. The sound wasn't on the wall, it was coming from inside it. The next morning the apartment felt different. The air was heavy, and the smell, it had changed. The subtle scent of Old Spice and metal was gone. In its place was an overpowering, cloying wave of the same scent, but it was thick now, mingled with something foul and organic. It smelled like mildew and stagnant, dirty bathwater. A wave of nausea hit me. I spent the next hour frantically searching the apartment. I checked under every sink, inspected every corner for leaks or mold, but I found absolutely nothing. The place was spotless, but the smell was undeniable, and it was strongest right by the master bedroom door. It seemed to be seeping from under it. That night I dreaded sunset. I knew something was going to happen, and it did. The tapping didn't return. Instead, it was replaced by a sound far, far worse. It started as a muffled, heavy dragging, a slow, laborious sound moving across the floor of the inaccessible room. It was followed by a wet, scraping sound, like a heavy, damp sack of something being pulled across rough concrete. My blood ran cold. The sound was so vivid, so specific, it sounded exactly like someone was dragging a body across the floor. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't even hold my phone. Who would I call? The police? Yeah, hi, I'm hearing some weird dragging noises in a rich guy's apartment. They'd think I was crazy. I had to see. I had to know what was in there. I crept out of the guest room and approached the master bedroom door. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. Locked, of course, a heavy deadbolt. But that wasn't the main obstacle. Just as Max had said, a massive antique steel safe had been shoved directly in front of the door. It was the kind you see in old bank heist movies, the kind that must weigh close to 1,000 pounds. There was no way I was moving that thing. I was about to give up, to just lock myself in the guest room and pray for morning, when my eyes fell to the floor. The polished concrete was covered in a fine layer of dust everywhere, except for a perfect clean semicircle etched into the dust right around the base of the safe. It looked like someone, or something, had been rocking the safe, gently, back and forth, trying to slowly, patiently clear a path. My breath hitched. I don't know what possessed me, but I knelt down. I pressed my ear against the cold, polished steel of the safe itself. The sound was deafening. The rhythmic, wet, dragging sound was vibrating right through the metal, humming into my skull. It was so close, so immediate. It felt like it was happening right on the other side of that steel plate. Pure terror, cold and sharp, shot through me. I scrambled backward, away from the door, away from the sound. I ran to the kitchen on autopilot, my mind screaming. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a metal meat tenderizer. Without thinking, I ran to the living room, as far from the bedroom as I could get, and I slammed the tenderizer against the wall. A loud, echoing bang filled the apartment, and the dragging sound stopped, instantly. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the noise had been. I stood frozen, holding my breath, straining my ears. I waited for 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. And then I heard it. A single, clear, sharp sound that wasn't tapping, and it wasn't dragging. It was the distinct metallic click of a deadbolt locking. My heart fell into my stomach. I spun around, my eyes darting to the front door of the penthouse. It was still locked. I sprinted to the massive sliding glass doors that led to the balcony, locked. No one could have gotten in or out. Slowly, I turned back toward the hallway, back toward the guest room. And that's when I saw it. Lying in the center of my pillow, where my head should have been, was the key. The small ornamental brass key that had been stuck in the master bedroom deadbolt. The key Max told me was the only one, the one the architect had left inside the lock. But now it was here, on my pillow. It was wet to the touch, and it was cold, so unnaturally cold. As I picked it up, the overwhelming smell of old spice and mildew filled my nostrils. And then I saw the final detail. Scratched crudely into the key's brass head was a single letter, H. In that moment, a horrifying realization crashed over me. The architect hadn't left the house. He hadn't gone on a trip. He had simply become a part of its structure, and now he had the key to my room. Thanks so much for watching. This story was a wild ride, and if you have any chilling tales of your own, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more stories that will keep you up at night. Stay safe out there. My husband Leo travels for work a lot. He has this very specific, slightly annoying habit whenever he comes home late and knows I'm already asleep. He knocks 3 times on the glass of our bedroom window, waits 10 seconds, and then knocks again. 2 quick taps. It's our coded signal, a quiet "I'm home, don't worry." He says it's quieter than fumbling with the keys and setting off the alarm by accident. It's always been our thing, a little ritual that means he's safe. He left for a business trip to Frankfurt on Tuesday morning. I kissed him goodbye at the door, told him to be safe, and settled in for a few days of having the whole bed to myself. The first night was quiet, normal. But Wednesday night I was ripped from a deep sleep by a sharp jolt of adrenaline. Tap, tap, tap. It was the signal. That specific soft 3-knock pattern on the glass right above my head. My eyes shot open in the dark. For a second, a wave of confused relief washed over me. His flight must have been cancelled. He was home early. I glanced at the glowing red numbers on my alarm clock. 2:40 a.m. Okay, a little weird, but not impossible. So I waited. I waited for the second part of the code, the 2 quick taps that were supposed to follow. 10 seconds passed, 15, nothing, just silence. My relief started to curdle, turning into a cold, heavy apprehension in my stomach. What was he doing? Why would he only do half the signal? I sat up in bed, the sheets suddenly feeling cold and damp. The house was dead quiet. I was about to call out his name. Maybe he was just playing a weird prank when I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was perfect, identical to Leo's knock, but the timing was all wrong. It was like a rehearsal, like someone was practicing. It wasn't our signal anymore, it was a perversion of it. A cold dread snaked its way up my spine. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I slowly, carefully slid out of bed, trying my absolute best not to make the old floorboards creak. The room was pitch black, except for the faint orange glow of the distant streetlights filtering through the blinds, casting long, distorted shadows across the floor. I felt like I was moving through water as I crept to the window. My hand was shaking as I reached out and peeled the blind back just an inch, just enough to peer down into our small, fenced-in backyard. And I saw nothing. The yard was completely empty. The motion sensor perimeter light wasn't on. The only thing visible was the pale, dew-covered lawn shimmering under the moonlight and the thick black shadow cast by the big oak tree in the corner. It looked peaceful, but it didn't feel peaceful. I held the edge of the blind so tightly my knuckles turned white, straining my ears, listening for anything. A footstep, a whisper. But the silence was absolute, heavy and suffocating. I finally let go of the blind and stumbled back to bed, my mind racing. It had to be a branch from the oak tree tapping against the glass in the wind. Or maybe it was just a dream echo, my mind playing tricks on me because I was alone. I pulled the covers up to my chin, telling myself over and over that it was nothing. I eventually fell into a restless, dream-filled sleep. Thursday night. I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, every tiny creak of the house making me jump. I was tense, my entire body coiled like a spring, waiting, and then it came. The clock read 2:38 a.m. Tap, tap, tap. My body went instantly rigid. It was happening again. I didn't breathe. I just started counting in my head. 1, 2, 3. My heart pounded in time with the seconds. 7, 8, 9, 10. Just as the 10th second passed, just as I expected the silence, I heard a new sound. A sound that broke me. A wet, sucking sound, like someone peeling a huge sheet of thick plastic from the glass, right where the knocks had been. It was slow and deliberate. Then a low, drawn-out sigh followed it, a sound of immense soul-crushing disappointment, and it was right outside the pane of glass, inches from my head. I froze. I didn't move a muscle for what felt like an eternity, but the clock told me it was an hour. I just lay there, paralyzed by a terror so profound it felt like my blood had turned to ice. I was too scared to look, too scared to even breathe too loudly. What was out there? What was it that could make a sound like that? Eventually the sun began to rise, painting the room in soft shades of gray and pink, and the suffocating fear lessened its grip, just enough for me to function. This morning, after the sun was fully up and the world felt real again, I finally worked up the courage to look outside. I went downstairs, made a coffee with trembling hands and walked to the back door, peering at the bedroom window from the yard. The dewy grass near the window was flattened in a distinct semicircle, exactly where something heavy would have been kneeling. My stomach dropped, and then I saw the glass itself. Where the first 3 knocks had been the night before, there were 3 faint, greasy smudges, like fingertips pressed against the pane. But where the sighing sound had come from, the entire lower pane of the window was now completely, perfectly clean. It was wiped clear of all the morning dew, all the dust, everything. As if something had pressed against it and wiped it clean. But it wasn't just clean. Printed clearly on that freshly wiped surface, I saw something that made me want to scream. It wasn't a smudge. It was an indentation in the glass itself, like the heat of whatever touched it had subtly warped it. And the shape of that indentation was the distinct, detailed outline of a large, flattened human ear. My phone rang this afternoon, shattering the silence. It was Leo. His voice was frantic, panicked. "Hey, something really weird is going on," he said, his words tumbling over each other. "I don't know why, but I keep getting logged out of my flight tracker app. It's like someone else is trying to use it. And my voice memo app. It sent me a notification for a new recording. I didn't record anything. Listen to this." He played the sound file over the phone. At first it was just static, but then underneath the hiss I could hear it. I could hear my own ragged, terrified breathing from the last 2 nights. Then a sound that made my blood run cold. A crystal clear, sharp tap, tap, tap. It was followed by that long, slow, sickening sound of something peeling away from the glass. And then a whisper. A dry, rasping whisper that definitely wasn't Leo's. It said one word. Almost. Thank you so much for watching. I'm not sure what I'm going to do or what's coming for me. If you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear what happens next, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Stay safe out there.